Convened in a committee of the whole meeting on Monday, June 23rd, 2014, in the boardroom of the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District Instructional Support Center, 10,300 Jones Road, Houston, Texas, at 6 p.m. for the purpose of reviewing that portion of the June 26, 2014 school board agenda designated as action items and to hear designated reports and recognitions posted in the meeting notice as required by Texas law. No action will be taken at this meeting. I want to welcome the members of our audience and our television viewers to this meeting of the Board of Trustees. As the Cypress-Fairbanks Board of Trustees, we're here to set goals, listen to reports, approve budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. It is not the role of the board to make day-to-day operational decisions. The management and day-to-day operations of the district are the responsibility of the superintendent. We have policies and procedures in place to resolve concerns and issues. This is a public meeting of the Board of Trustees, not a meeting of the public. Prior to this meeting, board members received information related to items on tonight's agenda. Agenda items will not necessarily be handled in the order listed on the notice. The meeting is open to all who wish to attend and hear the matters discussed. During the course of this meeting, the board may determine that a closed session is necessary. In that event, the board will meet in closed session to consider matters duly posted for this meeting as permitted by section 551.071 to 551.084 inclusive of the Texas Government Code. These proceedings are airing live on CFTV Channel 16 and CFTV online on the district website. They will also be rebroadcast throughout the month on Channel 16 and available as video on demand on the website. For the tape to adequately reflect the proceedings, I respectfully ask that you please refrain from talking while others are speaking and that cell phones are turned off or in silent mode. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening and for your interest in the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District. Before we continue with the meeting, I want to recognize our TV crew that actually came in for the summer, so we appreciate these guys. From Cypress Creek High School, Samantha Casas, Alex Carballo, Anastasia Gorshunina. And I want to point out, Anastasia, I nailed that last name. Killed it. From Jersey Village High School, Keith Hanks, and 2009 graduate Jordan O'Neill. Their AVP advisors are Jana Bullock and Cindy Stoker. So thank you guys for being here. The board received the following report. Agenda item 5A, the administration will provide a written report on the School Health Advisory Council. Any questions from board members? Okay, Roy, thank you for that report. Agenda item 6A, the board will consider awarding bids and contracts and or authorizing purchase orders as recommended in the posted agenda item. Acoustical wall treatment, Hamilton Middle School, art and miscellaneous school supplies, Barker Cypress transportation, fuel dispenser and FMS equipment replacement, beverages, and these are normal beverages, I should point that out. Comprehensive automobile liability insurance, concrete demolition and installation, condenser and cooling tower treatment services, dry grocery, food service equipment, frozen and refrigerated foods, fruits and vegetables, general liability and school professional legal liability insurance, ice cream, office supplies, portable building, walkway canopy installations, printer supplies, produce, software license and maintenance renewal or expansion, vending snacks, Yeager Elementary school replacement furniture. Any questions from board members? Tom?
I have a couple of questions on the HVAC cooling as well as the turf for the football field. However, those can be answered. They will not impact my decision. I'm just looking for a little details to cross the T's and dot the I's, and so that can be handled outside of the meeting.
Isn't the turf coming? The turf's coming up later in the agenda, isn't it?
It is a separate agenda.
Yeah. Okay. Let's wait till we get to that item, if you don't mind, to ask on that one.
Oh, I already just said what I had to say.
Oh, okay. Okay. Awesome.
As it relates to the software licensing that's used in our classrooms, one of my questions had to, related to Achieve 3000. I went to the R&R, and the information contained in that presentation is just tremendous, and so I asked Linda if she would just pick a couple of the more significant slides to share with the rest of the board. But the results are dramatic, and I think having the slides shown on Thursday will be more meaningful than just having her give the raw data. So with your forbearance, Mr. President, I'd ask that we do that on Thursday. We can, if it's the board's preference, we can still move it to consensus. But I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. As it relates to...
It's already on consent.
iStation, Linda, and I went to that seminar as well. It's very helpful that we have an opportunity to see the software and the results of it prior to having to vote on it. It's always good to be able to make an informed decision. A couple of questions for us. We're being asked to approve extensions, isn't that correct? Because iStation is partially mandated / paid by the state of Texas, and so this is extending what we already have, is that right?
That is correct. What we're actually extending is the ISEP component of the iStation, and that is a one of the tests that's on the state's approved test for reading, and it's for K2. And so that's what we use here in Cypress. So that's a piece that we buy every single year. In addition to that, there is a software piece that goes with iStation, and we use that as an intervention for kids who are struggling in reading. iStation identifies them as at risk and not yet proficient.
And I would add to that that for iStation, their data that they've collected shows, one, that their predictive variable, not only is it statistically significant, it is so at the 95% confidence level. And what you just indicated is within our district, we do use the software so that teachers can document when they intervene and what intervention strategies they use for those students that may need that help.
That is correct. That is correct. The system provides the teachers with many reports that they can utilize at different intervals, and gives them information on this is the area that the students need additional support in. So yes, that's correct.
And if you would, briefly outline what the Spanish component of this is.
The Spanish ISEP is the counterpart to the English ISEP. It is new. This past school year, or I guess we're still in the current school year, the 13-14 school year, we were one of the pilot sites for the iStation in Espanol. But it's basically the counterpart to the English component. And then
Also within this grouping of software that we're looking at tonight is System 44 Next Generation. If I remember right, we approved that for the first time last year, so this is merely an extension of what we already looked at. Isn't that correct?
That is correct. We've had System 44 for a couple of years. What we approved last year was the upgrade. That's kind of what we approved. That is what we approved last year. So this is a continuation of the program. That is correct.
And once again, the data shows the efficacy of this software is truly tremendous. But as a principal pointed out to me, which I well know, but it always bears repeating, you can have the best software in the world, but you still need a good teacher to make it work.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Linda. Don, those were my questions.
Thank you. Any other board members with questions?
I can't reach it. And maybe it was kind of answered. It was along the lines of Mr. Jackson. Just, I was curious as to, will this provide for additional grade levels that we haven't provided for in the past?
Are you referring to all of the different programs?
Yeah, just the software in general.
It is well, actually for iStation, We do the intervention Ps and the ISEP at K2, but we have the whole program available to us
Okay.
to 8th grade, actually.
Oh, super.
And then Achieve 3000 right now, we use it at elementary and middle school. And System 44, again, is across the different grade levels.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Agenda item 6B, the board will consider approving the attached list of students for off-campus physical education category 1 for the 2014-2015 school year. Any questions from board members? Agenda item 6C, the board will consider approving a request for a Texas Education Agency expedited waiver to modify the timeline for accelerated instruction. Any questions from board members? Agenda item 6D, the board will consider approving a request for a Texas Education Agency general waiver to opt out of participation in the teacher data portal of the Texas Assessment Management System for 2014-2015. Questions from board members? Agenda item 6E, the board will consider approving construction proposals and contracts paid from bond funds to the recommended contractor and authorize the superintendent or designee to execute all necessary documents. Package B, 2013, Berry Center Turf Bond Funds. Any questions from board members? Agenda item 6F, the board will consider approving the budget amendments for the period of April 1st, 2014 through June 30th, 2014. Questions? Yes, Mr. Jackson.
Stuart, if you would, on the adjustments, you showed a reduction in revenues, and it was as a result of a lower than forecasted student enrollment. And there's a couple of ways that you can look at that number. Would you briefly comment on that, please?
Well, the adjustment to state revenue is due to a combination of a couple of things, and since Karen is responsible for this report, I would like to give her an opportunity to respond to that, okay?
By all means.
The revenues, the reason that the revenues are showing a lower amount is because the enrollment that was originally projected at the beginning of the school year ended up being less than anticipated. So that's, I mean, it was just less, it wasn't what it was projected originally.
Well, yes, but is that because of, there's a couple of potential reasons for that. One is the maximum head count, or it could be because we had the head count approximately correct, but our water numbers were low because we had a higher than anticipated level of absenteeism.
And it was not related to the absenteeism. It was truly just the projected budget related to enrollment. It wasn't as much, the enrollment, the percentage of increase wasn't as high as anticipated.
We also have a few of our special population enrollment projections were slightly too high used for budget purposes, and so when the actual enrollment came in for those special populations, it was a little bit lower.
Mm-hmm.
The other reason for the reduction in state funding was that the state comptroller's property values that are used for state funding purposes ended up being higher than what we used for budget purposes, and therefore the increased the district share of Tier 1 revenue, reducing the state share. On the debt side, the same is true. That relates to the existing debt allotment. It's also an equalized program similar to Tier 1, and with that is impacted by the comptroller's values as well as our enrollment projections.
So let me repeat what you said to make certain that I fully understand it. Because our local revenue will be higher because of rising property values, the state will reduce the amount of money they'll be sending to us. Is that correct?
Our local revenue is higher. The local revenue is determined by the appraisal by the Harris County Appraisal District. That those property values impact our property tax revenue. The state revenue property values are valued by the state controller. There's always a year lag, and so any increases in property values that we see this year, we will see, will benefit us in terms of additional tax revenue this year, but will also hurt us next year because it will require, or it will cause a reduction in state revenue.
Do any of these changes, and these modifications are not big in the overall scheme of things. Overall, it's a small percentage. Does this have any impact on our projections going forth? Is there a trend here that?
No, those,
Because-
the projections that we've used for the budget that you adopted for 14-15 reflects what our best estimate and guess is going to be in terms of property values.
Very good, thank you.
Any additional questions from board members? Agenda item 6G, the board will consider approving on second reading revisions to district policies, BP local administrative regulations, CFEA local payroll procedures, salary deductions and reductions. Questions? Agenda item 6H, the board will consider approving the tax refunds of $500 or greater for Cypress-Fairbanks ISD. Questions? Agenda item 6I, the board will consider approving the minutes of the May 5th, 2014 special called meeting. Any questions? 6J, the board will consider approving the minutes of the May 12th, 2014 regular meeting. Any questions? 6K, the board will consider approving the minutes of the May 19th, 2014 special called meeting. Any questions on those? We'll now go to our non-consent portion of the agenda. 7A, the board will consider approving a resolution for the commitment of the district's fund balance. Any questions from board members? I'd like to move that to consent, please. 7B, the board will consider a resolution approving the district's investment policy and investment strategy, the investment officers of the district, the independent sources of instruction relating to investment responsibilities for the investment officers of the district, and investment training hours. Questions from board members? I'd like to move that to consent as well. Agenda item 7C, the board will consider approving a resolution to reimburse itself for the costs associated with technology projects and purchase of buses from the proceeds of tax-exempt bond obligations to be issued at a subsequent date. Questions from board members?
Mr. President,
Mr. Jackson.
I'd like to go back to the prior one on the Public Funds Investment Act. I have a quick question.
On B, okay. We're going to go back to 7B, and that was the board will consider a resolution approving the district's investment policy and investment strategy, the investment officers of the district, the independent sources of instruction relating to investment responsibilities for the investment officers of the district, and investment training hours. Mr. Jackson.
That was easy for you to say, and you didn't even take a breath. Stuart, in the past, the conflict of interest forms by the public funds investment officers have been submitted to the internal auditor for review. Has that happened yet this year?
We do that annually. We complete conflict of interest disclaimer and disclosure forms that's maintained, as you say, by the internal auditor, and she then reports to the board at the end of June. I think it's the last week of June that's typically done, so I would suspect that that report is forthcoming within this next week.
Very good, thank you.
And that's still going on consent, by the way. Any questions on 7C? I'd like that on consent as well. 7D, the board will consider approving a resolution terminating services with the current 457 plan provider and allowing the district to move its plan to the ESC Region 10 457 Cooperative and Master Plan through an interlocal agreement with the Region 10 Education Service Center. And before I ask for questions, I do want to recognize from TCG Consulting, Mr. Mike Cochran is out in our audience. Mike, if you'd stand up, and I also know you have two of your cohorts here. If you want to introduce them, that'd be great.
Tom Pesci and Sandy
John and Sandy, thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it. Questions from board members on this item? Mr. Jackson?
Stuart, the information in the board packet, this all sounds very straightforward. It's all self-explanatory. It sounds like it is, in fact, what needs to be done. However, I know in the past, when we've come to a juncture like this, from time to time, some of the employees do not have the same degree of satisfaction. Do we have any input from employees on this?
Not that I'm aware of, and again, Karen has been quarterbacking this project, and I would like for her to step forward if she could and just answer any of your questions.
As Mr. Snow said, we haven't discussed it with the employees, but what we do believe is this will be a much better plan for the employees because the fees will be lower. Therefore, they will realize, a better investment. The fees are actually about 1% lower on an annual basis. In addition, the other thing is that the district will not be the fiduciary related to the plan in this situation, and we currently are the fiduciary, so that will be transferring risk away from the district.
Well, as I said, it all sounds very straightforward, self-explanatory, and highly supportable. But thank you for responding.
I'd like to move that to consent. 7E, the board will consider approving a list of qualified financial institutions, brokers, dealers, and investment advisor that are authorized to engage in investment transactions with the district. Questions from board members? I'd like to move that to consent. 7F, the board will consider nominations for the large district member position on the TASB Board of Directors and TASB Region 4, Position F. And that's on page 377. And earlier in the week, Ms. Blowy had sent us some information on this
Mr. President,
individual.
could I ask you to remove Lida's name? My name is not Lida Bob Covey. That's all right. Just, I've been accused of that before, if that's okay. I am sensitive,
I'll do that for you, Jerry. Does anybody have any objection to our nominee or anything you know about him? Skeletons in the closet, anything? We're good, okay. Let's go ahead and move that to consent as well. (7G), the board will consider approving the 2014 Harris County Protective Services Interlocal Agreement with the Harris County Protective Services for Children and Adults, HCPSA, to provide community use services for students and families in the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District. Questions from board members? Mr. Covey.
Just kind of an overview of what all takes place with this, if we could, Roy, if you don't mind.
Definitely can, Mr. Covey. Just some basic information about this. The standard fee for each of these individuals is a little bit over $35,000. In our interlocal agreement, that is 50%. And of course, Harris County Protective Services for Children and Adults pays the other 50%. We've had 14 what we call youth services specialists in our district for several years now, dating back to 1980. And it is a wonderful agreement that gives us an opportunity to meet the needs of our students that we have. Think of social workers and the many services, resources, et cetera, that they can provide our students, and that's what takes place here. Just to give you some of the daily operation, serve as mentors of the district's crisis team. They're able to assist us out when we have a crisis, maybe a death of a student, a death of a family member, runaways, home visits. These individuals are able to make home visits as necessary, make referrals to community agencies, and they also assist us with our communication and kind of serve as a liaison, if you will, with Child Protective Services to assist with that. It's difficult to say just one thing or a list of things that they participate in, but it's a wealth of resources and just opportunities that are shared with our students, with our parents, to assist with the needs that they have. I think back of some of the examples, unfortunately, where we have families that lose their home due to a fire. They're able to provide the everyday resources right away to assist our students and our families in our community.
Thank you, Mr. Covey. And we're going to move that to consent as well, please, Donna. 7H, the board will consider approving the granting of a 0.0086 acre water meter easement to Harris County Municipal Utility District Number 196 for water services to Woodard Elementary School Number 54, and authorize the superintendent or designee to negotiate the final terms and execute all related documents. Questions from board members? I'd like to move that to consent as well. 7I, the board will consider approving the granting of the owner's ratification of plat for the future elementary school site at West Road and Mirabella Drive. Questions from board members? I'd like to move that to consent as well. 7J, the board will consider approving on first reading additions, revisions, or deletions to district policies, CCA local revenue source bond issues, revise, DBE local employment requirements and restrictions, nepotism, delete, DC local employment practices, revise, DH local employee standards of conduct, revise, DK local assignment and schedules, revise, EHDC local alternative methods for earning credit by examination without prior instructions, revise. Any questions from board members? I'd like to move that to consent as well. 7K, the board will consider approval of the contract of employment for the superintendent as presented by the general counsel in closed session. This item will be discussed in closed session tonight. The superintendent's briefing portion of the agenda will be presented on Thursday evening. May I have a motion to go into closed session, please?
Do you need a motion to move to consent all of those items? Or we can wait for this?
No, I moved them to consent, and then we'll vote on them Thursday.
I'd so moved.
Okay.
Close session.
Motion, Mr. Covey, second, Ms. Mongoya. All those in favor, please signify. It's unanimous. The board will now adjourn to closed session under Texas Government Code Open Meetings Act, Sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.073, 551.074, 551.076, 551.082, 551.083, and 551.084 for the purposes stated in the posting of this meeting. If the board determines that any final action, final vote, or decision on any matter considered in the closed session is required, such final vote, action, or decision shall be taken upon the reconvening of this meeting in open session or at a subsequent meeting of the board in open session after proper notice has been posted. We will come back out, but that will just be to close the meeting officially. We won't be having any more discussion or taking further action out here tonight. So we appreciate all of you attending tonight and hope you have a great evening. Thank you.